While most companies are making one super shoe and a training companion, ASICS has made two different super shoes for two different types of runner. This is the Metaspeed Edge Plus and the Metaspeed Sky Plus, and it's time to take them for a run. "10 miles at marathon effort, 14 miles total for the run, both in the Metaspeed Edge Plus and the Metaspeed Sky Plus, so I can compare these two shoes head to head. Now, before I give you my thoughts on these two shoes, after this run that I ran this week in each of these shoes, plus additional other workouts that I've done, I do want to go over some disclosures. Both of these shoes were sent to me by ASICS for the purpose of review. However, nobody's paying me to make this video or to use these shoes, and no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. I should also say that I'm doing a lot of work with ASICS currently this year in the lead up to the World Championships in Oregon, and I've done a lot of projects with ASICS in the past, so there's plenty of opportunity for bias to be inserted in there as I've worked with ASICS and met a lot of ASICS people, so please feel free to take that into consideration before evaluating these opinions. All right, with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Metaspeed Edge Plus and the Metaspeed Sky Plus. First, let's go over the two types of runners that I described at the top of the video that ASICS envisions in using these two very similar looking but yet very different shoes. So ASICS in their research has discovered or is postulating or proposing that there are two types of runners: stride runners and cadence runners. And the idea in terms of differentiating who is to look at what happens to your stride length as you're trying to go faster. Now, for everyone that's out there, as you go faster, your stride length increases. So the amount of distance you cover per foot strike. But for stride runners, as you are going faster, your stride length increases much more than the stride length increases for cadence runners. So the other way to look at it is to go faster, stride runners increase the length of their stride, whereas cadence runners increase the number of strides that they take. So that's kind of one way to simplify it. So if you were to take your stride length at a variety of different paces and kind of plot that out as you go faster, what does it do to the stride length? Stride runners will have a very steep slope, whereas cadence runners will have a very low slope. But it's the rate of change or that slope of those lines which defines which runner is a stride runner and which runner is a cadence runner. And for ASICS, that's important because each of those different types of runners requires different things in order to perform optimally, to be most efficient. And as we've learned over the past couple of years from a variety of different brands, it's that running efficiency for those marathon efforts and half marathon efforts that is really important when it comes to designing these super shoes. So with that kind of premise set in mind, let's talk about the differences in the specs of these two shoes and how they're set up differently to cater to those different types of runners. Now, both of these shoes start out with 39 millimeters of stack height in the heel and use FF Turbo, which is their super foam, which compresses really quickly and springs back really quickly as well. They each also have a carbon fiber plate, but that's pretty much where the similarities end in these two shoes, even though they do look very similar. For the Metaspeed Edge, there's a 8mm drop, which means that there's 31mm of stack height in the forefoot, and that carbon fiber plate is tilted very aggressively downward. So that way there's not a lot of distance between the ground and the carbon fiber plate, and there's more distance in terms of foam between the plate and your foot. In combination with that very aggressive slope downward of the carbon fiber plate, the Metaspeed Edge Plus has a very early rocker. So the rocker, that kind of shaping of the shoe that helps make that shoe kick up and that heel pick up as you're rolling through that foot strike, that starts really early in the Metaspeed Edge, and it's very aggressive. It's something that I feel very prominently when I run in this shoe, and all those things combine together to make it so that way it helps those cadence runners that need to turn over quickly in order to increase speed feel very snappy as they're going through their gait cycle. The Metaspeed Sky Plus also has that 39mm stack height in the heel, but it's a 5mm drop, so there's 34mm of stack height in the forefoot, and that carbon fiber plate is pretty much high up, very close to the foot, which when I originally heard that, I thought that's going to be really uncomfortable to run in. I don't understand why they do that. Why don't they put the carbon fiber plate really close to the ground so that way there's more cushion underneath your foot? But what I'm realizing is the placement of the carbon fiber plate isn't so much about comfort, because I'm starting to think that I don't think your foot can discern where in the stack the carbon fiber plate is in terms of how squishy does the foam feel. What I think that your foot can discern, though, in terms of where that carbon fiber plate is placed, is how stable does the shoe feel when it hits the ground. So when you have the carbon fiber plate close to the ground, I feel like the carbon fiber engages the ground earlier, and so there's less potential squish, and if your foot strike is sloppy, there's less potential squirrely wobbliness before that carbon fiber engages and also kind of levels out the impact forces. When the carbon fiber plate is further for the ground, that means that there's more room for the shoe to squish, but also you have to have a little bit of a cleaner foot strike in order for it to not feel unstable. So that's a big difference there, and the foot feels the distance between the ground and the carbon fiber plate, not so much how close is that carbon fiber plate to your foot. At least that's what I'm thinking based on my experience with these two shoes. Also, when it comes to the rocker, there is a rocker in the Metaspeed Sky Plus, but it's a very late rocker. So it stays flat longer, and then way at the end, then it very quickly curls up into this more aggressive toe spring. And so when I'm running in the Metaspeed Sky Plus, I pretty much feel like there isn't a rocker in this shoe, which I'm starting to learn is a preference that I definitely have. The other difference in these two shoes, and I think it's pretty subtle, comes in the outsole shape. Now, at first I thought they were the exact same outsole for both of the shoes, but now that I've gotten the shoes a little bit dirty, I've noticed a couple of different other things happening in the shoe. So the outsole pattern is definitely very different from version 1 for both of the shoes, where I think there's a little bit more of a scallop cut out of this area, kind of like at the front of the arch of your foot, as ASICS realized that people just weren't wearing the shoe down right there, so they didn't have to put rubber there. But as it curls down, for the Metaspeed Sky Plus, there's just kind of like this kind of like handlebar, if you want to think of it as like a sideburn, coming down towards the end of the lateral side of the foot. On the Metaspeed Edge Plus, this handlebar has like a little loop at the end here. So it's a little bit wider surface area wise, but also I think to save weight, they've cut out a little donut here. So the raised kind of ring of outsole rubber here gives you more coverage without adding that much more weight. So there's a slight difference there. The other thing is, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a little bit of a channel down the middle of this foot. And I think that what a lot of that's going to do is help make sure that the shoe gets guided in a forward direction. So it's supposed to help kind of keep the shoe rolling forward. The Metaspeed Edge Plus has a much deeper and longer channel that's going up the center of the foot, whereas the Metaspeed Sky Plus has a little bit of a channel. It's not as deep and it doesn't go quite as long. So another subtle difference in the sculpting of the foam that's happening in this shoe. As far as the uppers go, I think they're pretty much exactly the same upper with exactly the same fit, the exact same materials, and the exact same shoelaces. I like both of the uppers. It's a little bit still on the coarse side, but it ultimately, in terms of keeping the foot in place during some race efforts, I think it does a fantastic job. Now, in terms of changes from last year's version, the Metaspeed Sky Plus only gets 1 millimeter more of stack height, but it's not like they just kind of glued another millimeter of stack height to the top of the shoe. They've actually increased the total volume of foam by 4%, and a lot of that's coming from the later rocker that they put in this shoe, and a little bit more width that they give in terms of a landing pad for you to land on as your foot hits the ground. So I feel like it's a little bit more bulbous and round in the forefoot in this shoe, and a little bit more forgiving for those marathon paces, at least for someone that hits the ground like my foot likes to hit the ground. The bigger changes in terms of stack heights and configuration happens with the Metaspeed Edge Plus, where it has an additional 5 millimeters of stack height in both the heel and the forefoot to give you a lot more of that FF Turbo feel. Now, with the cadence versus stride distinction explained, I know you probably still have more questions, but with that base explanation there and with the difference in specs laid out, let's talk about how I would recommend someone else chooses between these two shoes. Now, the first thing that I'll say is I've suspected that I'm a stride runner, and having tried these two shoes, I think that's definitely the case. I much prefer the Metaspeed Sky Plus over the Edge Plus. I don't think it's because the Edge Plus is necessarily a worse shoe. I just think it's not a shoe for me. Taking it for marathon efforts, I felt like it just wasn't as comfortable. I don't really like rockered race shoes. Is something that I've lately discovered having run in this Metaspeed Edge Plus, but also I recently tested the Reebok Float Ride Energy X and the Craft Ultra Carbon 2. And while all of those shoes are good shoes, I don't love them at that marathon pace. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that those plates are set up and the way that those shoes all have very aggressive rockers. I just don't think for me and my foot strike, it matches up well when I'm trying to run efforts at marathon pace. So I think rocker preference is definitely one way that you can look at these two shoes and think about like which one of these is going to be better for me. And now when it comes to like an easy day shoe or recovery run shoe, I definitely like a rocker. But when it comes to race shoes, I'm realizing that I don't. For runners that are like that, I would say look at the Metaspeed Sky Plus. But I think ultimately the better thing that you can do, rather than just kind of go by whether you like aggressive rockers in your race shoes or not, is to go to a running store that has both of these shoes and has a treadmill that you can hop onto and try it at your marathon pace or whatever race pace, depending on what races you're getting ready for or have in mind as you're looking at these two shoes. Like, get on the treadmill and try it at those paces and see which feels better. You're going to notice that there's a big difference between the two shoes, and you're going to have a clear sense of which one is the right one for you. For me, it was pretty apparent right away. Now, there's a third way to look at these two shoes and try to like figure out which one you want. And that would be to ask, what kind of work do you want to do in these two shoes? Do you want to race marathons? Do you want to race 5Ks? So I think one way you could look at these is to say that the Metaspeed Sky Plus is a little bit more like a Next Percent or maybe an Adios Pro, whereas the Metaspeed Edge Plus is a little bit more like a Streakfly or a Takumi Sen. Because what I found is that while there are certainly those graphs where you can graph like as you increase in speed, does the stride length increase a lot or does it increase a little? And ASICS has always been describing these things as like just straight lines with just like a constant slope. But I think that no matter who you are, at a certain point, to increase speed, you're gonna have to level off and just turn your legs over faster. And so for me, when I'm at marathon pace, I love the Metaspeed Sky Plus. But when I get down to 5K pace, the Metaspeed Edge Plus starts to make a lot more sense. And I really like the rocker. I really like the faster turnover, because for me to get from say like 10K speed to 5K speed, I can't increase my stride length by bounding further anymore. I've reached like kind of my limit. There's diminishing returns. And for me to get faster, I just got to figure out a way to turn the legs over that much quicker. And so depending on the work that I'm doing, then I'm starting to look more towards the Metaspeed Edge Plus when I'm trying to really pick up those paces. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense and helps you guys understand the difference between those two shoes. I definitely have my preference in the shoe that I like better, and the other one isn't a bad shoe, but it definitely isn't for me. It doesn't line up with my preferences, so I don't like the Edge Plus quite as much as I love the Metaspeed Sky Plus. So if you have any other questions about that, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. I'd love to answer any questions you guys have in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?